Excellent. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so as you heard, my name is Scott Ambler. I'll give you a little more information on that in a minute. But what I'd like to talk about today are basically some lessons learned over the years, helping organizations to become more effective at their ways of working and ways of thinking, and hopefully help them to apply Discipline Agile, or PMI's Discipline Agile, I should say, to become a more purposeful learning organization to truly improve. So what does that look like in practice is a valid question. So first of all, I just want to point out that I used to be an executive at PMI. Discipline Agile is a registered trademark at PMI, and it's fully owned and supported and evolved by PMI. So just to make that clear, and the web page for it is pmi.org/disciplineagile, and there's a phenomenal amount of material there. PMI is very generous in how they share the DAIP. So this is a very good thing. So having said all that, so I'm not in a position to be to tell you exactly what PMI is doing with DA at the present moment. So just to make it clear, but what I can do is share almost 2 decades of experience helping organizations to become more agile and more lean, or a little over 2 years, 2 decades, I should say, of experience. So let's get into it. So as you heard, so my name is Scott Ambler. I'm currently the consulting methodologist for Ambysoft.com. Along with Mark Lyons, I was the co-creator of the Discipline Agile Toolkit. But I've also done extensive work in the Agile modeling and Agile data worlds. And I'm a thought leader behind both of those methods. Particularly I'm doing a lot of work right now in AI and as a result in the data world, particularly around data quality. So the Agile data material is absolutely critical for that. And I'm in the process of updating both those websites, well, all 3 of those websites that we see there. So have a little patience, particularly with the Agile data and Agile modeling sites. We're doing major releases next week, I hope. So anyway, so what do I want to talk about today, though? So first, I want to share a few ideas around what I would consider to be a successful Agile transformation, with Agile transformation in air quotes there, I guess. It's not really about transformations, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then we'll work through some of the situations that we're seeing in organizations, and certainly, Ukraine has got some interesting challenges going on right now, as you know. But and then we'll get into Discipline Agile and how do you apply it at the team and team, individual, and organization levels to do improvement. So, what is a successful Agile transformation? What should you be aiming for there? Well, I should have also mentioned, I'm going to do Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And if we run out of time, I'm happy to answer any remaining questions via email. So we can figure that out when it happens. So anyways, so first of all, the bad news is that most Agile transformations fail. The Agile community, suffers from depending on who you talk to, between a 70 and 90% failure rate in Agile transformations. And a lot of it is due to mismanagement and missed expectations. So we'll explore what that actually means. So some of my advice to increase your chances of success: recognize that you start where you start. So start where you are. And you would think this was obvious, but sometimes it's not. So I think my main advice here is to recognize that you're currently doing whatever it is that you're doing, and you're doing some good things. There's some things you could probably improve upon. So focus on what you need to improve upon, and don't break what's not broken. So I think that's sadly, it's something I shouldn't have to say, but in many organizations, I find I need to. Another thing I want to share is adopting a framework like Scrum or SAFe or LESS or others. It might be a good start for you, and that's okay, but it's only the first step. The goal is not to adopt SAFe or Scrum or less or whatever. That is simply not the goal. Now, the SAFe consultants or the Scrum consultants out there will tell you differently, because they're one-trick ponies. But the reality is the real goal should be to become a purposeful learning organization. So what does that mean? So the first concept is become a learning organization. And what that means is always strive to improve, get good at learning, get good at improving, because you can always get better. You will never, ever, ever be finished your improvement journey. It's simply not possible. There's always opportunities to learn. And frankly, the environment changes constantly, as you know. You always have to adapt and respond to change. And that is the hallmark of a learning organization. The second the second aspect of that is become a purposeful organization. So it's about more than just it should be about more than just making money or, serving your customers or whatever it is. Now, those are good things, don't get me wrong, but the real question is, how are you making things better? How are you making the world better in the, overall effort of, serving your customers or whatever it is that your organization does? So look beyond money is my advice there. So what challenges do we face, and what opportunities do we face? So first, what are the top 7 threats to your organization? And I appreciate that you do have a fairly major war going on right now in your country. So, this is a generic slide. So, but the war, I think, would be your first challenge. But anyways, the increasing pace of change, and if we're in normal times, certainly the increasing pace of change and the increasing complexity that our organizations face to serve our customers better, to achieve whatever mission we're trying to achieve. The Great Reshuffle, this is something that's going on worldwide. So after COVID, a lot of people are changing their organizations. We're seeing a lot of retirements. We're seeing a lot of people reducing the hours that they're working, refusing to go into the office and, insisting on working from home. And when they're not allowed to, they change organizations. And this can be a bit of a threat. A lot of organizations are losing good people because these people simply don't want to work for these companies anymore. Climate change, bad news. The technical debt that our organizations face, the poor quality source code that we have, the poor quality data that we have. Like I said, I'm these days I'm focusing a lot on artificial intelligence. And one of the biggest challenges to do AI development within organizations is data. The lack of data, the quality of data, the poor quality of data. It's a garbage in, garbage out situation with AI. And unfortunately, a lot of our data is garbage. So we really need to pay down our data technical debt, as well as our code technical debt and other forms of technical debt. Robotics and AI, clearly a threat, a potential threat at least. And just transformation fatigue. People are tired of change. They're tired of this constant, digital transformations, object transformations, this transformation, that transformation. I know many organizations that are on their 7th or 8th Agile transformation attempt. People are getting tired of this crap. they simply are. So this is what we face. But there's also many opportunities. So the increasing pace of change means that we have opportunities to pivot and to serve our customers in different ways and to grab market share if we can understand what these changes are and then meet them and get ahead of them. Robotics and AI have fantastic opportunities for improvement. The 2020s is going to be phenomenally interesting, particularly due to AI. And the applications thereof. I think at the end of the decade, it's going to be completely different than the beginning of the decade. The Great Reshuffle, a lot of opportunity to pick up good people as well. So this is a good thing. I'm seeing an increase in holistic thinking, looking beyond our organization, looking beyond ourselves. And I think this is a good thing. People asking, what can we do for our country? What can we do for our, for the environment and to make the world a better place? So I hope this continues. increasing agility of organizations. We are seeing things improve. Could be better, but we're definitely seeing things improve. New ways of working. Once again, AI and Agile and Lean are bringing a lot of opportunities to our organizations, and new ways of thinking. I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. This is absolutely critical as well. So, what is Discipline Agile? Now, this is a big topic. I certainly can't do it justice in the 5 minutes that I'm going to try to do it justice in, but I'll certainly point you in the right direction. And earlier, I shared the PMI.org/Discipline Agile URL. So, I should also mention these slides are available. I've sent a PDF copy of these slides, so you don't have to write madly if that's what you're trying to do. A couple interesting things. First of all, Discipline Agile is architected, and not only is it architected, we publish the architecture early on. So I just want to share that architecture with you now. One aspect of the architecture is that we've organized the toolkit into 4 aspects. The first and most important aspect is mindset. So how do you think? What's your ways of thinking? People are our next thing. So, the way we work together, what are our roles and responsibilities? What are the team structures? Good stuff like that. And then flow, how do we work together? And then finally, practices, what do we do? And the size of these bubbles vary to represent the importance of these aspects. And if you look at Discipline Agile in detail, you'll see throughout these aspects are referred to, that the web pages at PMI.org are organized in terms of these aspects. There's significant at all levels of the architecture and all levels of the toolkit. So you'll see significant complexity or significant consistency, I should say, as a result. And as a result, it reduces the complexity of the toolkit due to that consistency, just like in software architecture. So one of the things we did a few years ago now was, so when PMI purchased the Discipline Agile organization and Al Shalloway's organization, Net Objectives, and brought us together and combined the Net Objectives work into DA, the work around value streams and flow, and some just fantastic work. One of the things we did was we stepped back and we asked ourselves, if we were to rewrite the manifesto today, how do we capture it? Because the challenge was the Agile Manifesto, which is a fantastic artifact, was written over 20 years ago, and it reflected the challenges faced by software development teams in the 1990s. Most of those challenges have been addressed, and we've learned a few things in the last 2 decades. So we can do a lot better. Now, the challenge with the manifesto is that even though this is a group of people who preach change, they were unwilling to evolve the Agile Manifesto itself. So, and rightfully so, it's their business, they can do whatever they want. But there was no opportunity to to update the manifesto, and there's been many efforts to try to do so. And if you go poke around the net, you'll see various update suggestions to update the manifesto, including the Discipline Agile Manifesto. We actually in the late aughts, I believe we were the first to have the audacity to challenge the manifesto and say, you know what, they missed a few things and we've learned a few things, and maybe we should think outside of the box a bit and evolve the manifesto. And we did for many years. But then, with Al Shalloway coming on, we took the opportunity to rethink things a bit. And so we stepped back and we realized, well, we've learned a few things in the last couple of decades, but also the scope of what we're doing is different. So the scope of the Agile Manifesto was originally about software teams, which is great, but that's not what Agile is all about anymore. Agile is organization level stuff. It's really about business agility or organizational or enterprise agility, whatever term you want to use there. So we stepped back and we said, well, wait a minute, knowing what we know now, how would we capture the mindset of Agile? So what we did was this is what we came up with. If I can get this to work. First, we capture the manifesto, the shared mindset in the form of a collection of principles. So we believe in these principles. And because we believe in these principles, we make promises both to ourselves and to the teams, the people that we work with, our stakeholders. Here's how we're going to behave. And in order to fulfill these promises, we follow a collection of guidelines. So you can read this, and as you can see, this is well documented on the on PMI.org, and actually well documented in the books as well, if you happen to have the Choose Your Well book. So, excuse me. Anyways, the idea, this is a shared mindset, but we don't limit ourselves to that, because that I believe would be foolish, because in DA we choose to observe things. We choose to actually be, to react to what we see and to talk about what works in practice rather than what we think we hope will work. This is the difference between pragmatism and theory. So it's pretty easy to observe that different groups of people come to the table with different mindsets. So for example, the software people look at the world in a different way than the marketing people, who look at the world in a different way than the finance people, than the security people, than the governance people, and so on. So different groups of people look at things a different way. And that's perfectly fine. That's actually good. This is why we want to have diverse teams, to bring these diverse mindsets together. Now, we want to have a shared mindset. That's what the principles, promises, and guidelines are. But we also recognize that different groups of people will come to the table with different ways of looking at things. So in DA, we've also collected specific philosophies. So the Agile marketing mindset builds upon the principles, promises, and guidelines with a collection of Agile marketing oriented philosophies to reflect this is the way the marketing people should be looking at things, or are looking at things. So the advantage of this is that if I'm not familiar with the marketing folks, I can go and look at that. I can read these philosophies, and there's like 5 or 6. I don't remember the exact number, to get a handle on, well, what unique value are they going to bring to the table? What are they thinking about? So I can better appreciate where they're coming from and interact with them more effectively. And this is a huge advantage, particularly for coaches. For those of you, if any of you have considered doing the Discipline Agile Coach certification from PMI, we focus, that certification focuses on how do you get disparate teams of people interacting effectively. So how do you get that software team working well with the enterprise architecture team, or the data team, or the marketing team, or the finance team? Because if these different groups can't function together well, you're in serious trouble. It doesn't matter how good your software team is if you can't get money from the finance team because you're speaking a different language. So we also give people choice. So one of the significant observations of DA is that different teams work in different ways. My software team works differently than your software team. Your organization's marketing team will work differently than my organization's marketing team, and rightfully so. Now, ideally, we want to do what's right for our team, do the best we can in the situation that we face. So in DA, instead of telling you this is the one way of working, this is prescribing a way of working, like you see in most of the methods, when there's only one way of doing things, that's prescriptive, regardless of the marketing rhetoric around the framework, or around the method, whatever you want to call that. So instead of saying the best way to fund asset usage is team-based funding, we say, well, no, there's multiple ways that we can fund asset usage. This is, let me step back from this. What we're seeing here is a portion of what's called a goal diagram from the asset management process blade in Discipline Agile. So how do you manage the various assets of the organization is the challenge there. And so the way you read this is that 2 of the issues that you need to think about when if you're responsible for asset management is, well, how are we going to publish assets? How are we going to make them available to the rest of the organization? And how are we going to fund this, right? Because, where's the money going to come from? in order, because this, asset management costs, there's a cost there. So the idea is that instead of telling you this is the only, this is the best way of publishing assets, we realized, well, no, different organizations in different situations will work in different ways, and that's okay. So choose the best strategy for you in the situation that you face. So my asset management team might make a different decision than your team does, because we're different people in different situations in different organizations, and that's okay. So there's two types of lists here. So first of all, so when you want to publish assets, we've identified 3 different common techniques that you might want to consider adopting. Adopt one of the 3 type of a thing. And in behind this, which I'm not showing, there's descriptions of each of these techniques. There's advantages and disadvantages to each. So that way you can make a better choice. We'll talk about making choices in a minute. The idea is to choose the right one for you. And then there's references to articles and videos and books if you want more details other than like the paragraph or 2 that we use to describe each of these techniques. Now there's 2 types of lists here, one with an arrow and one without. The one with an arrow is called an ordered list. And what the arrow indicates is that the strategies towards the top of the list are generally more effective than the strategies towards the bottom of the list. So, your mileage may vary a bit, but for the most part, having a funded reuse team is far more effective than a chargeback scheme. So when there's no arrow, we can't tell you that, one technique is generally better than the other. We can tell you the advantages and disadvantages, so that way you can make a better decision as to which technique to go with. And so why do we do this? Well, the reality is when you read a lot of, if you read a lot of the methodologies out there or the process descriptions or articles about, some really cool new technique, they always tell you all the good advantages. They tell you, hey, this is why this is good. This is why we do it. This is why my technique can beat up your technique. It's always positive. They never tell you that, oh, yeah, if you do this, here's the downsides. Here's what's not going to work. Here's, how, it's going to help you here, but it's going to really screw you up over here. So you better be smart about that, right? You rarely ever see that in the literature. And that's a problem, right? Because all techniques have advantages and disadvantages. There is no such thing as a best practice. There simply isn't. All practices are contextual in nature. Any given practice will work well in some situations and will be a phenomenally bad idea in others. So you darn well better know when a technique works and when a technique doesn't work. Now, the challenge is, as we know, there's a lot to it. There's over 1,700 practices right now in the Discipline Agile toolkit. I would estimate that, if they were to if PMI was to fully flesh the toolkit out, they'd probably hit 2,500 or 3,000 at some point. I don't know if they're ever going to do that, of course, but that's what I would expect. But still, 1,700, fair number. It's not like some trivial process like Scrum, which is like 10 some odd practices, right? Come on. So anyway, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with Scrum. Don't get me wrong. So Discipline Agile has a enterprise level scope. It looks, goes far beyond software. So there's advice for, how you do marketing, how you do asset management, governance, vendor management, strategy, software development, of course, security, data management, and so on. There's many different aspects of the toolkit because your organization does all these things. It's not just about software. Your organization will have all these other aspects, or at least should probably consider having these other aspects if it doesn't already. So there's advice across the entire, for these different types of groups and these different process areas to improve them because there's always room for improvement regardless of your domain. This is particularly true at the team level. This is where most of the advice actually is, right? How do I help, what do I do to improve my team? So the toolkit captures a lot of techniques for helping a team to choose their own way of working. Our philosophy is that context counts. One of the principles of DA is context counts, because it's pretty easy to observe that individuals are unique, teams are unique because they're made up from unique individuals, and organizations are unique. Even a bank, like if you ever worked for like multiple types of banks, on the surface, a bank looks like a bank, but once you get into the organization, these banks are very different from each other, and rightfully so. And that's okay. So the point is that because teams are unique, they should be allowed to choose their own way of working, and as they learn, to evolve it over time. And this is actually a fundamental of the Agile movement. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, one of the philosophies in the Agile world was that a team should own its own process. That was our way at the time of saying that teams should be allowed to choose their own way of working, choose their own wow. So how do you do that? Well, at the beginning of an initiative, like a project, perhaps, you need to assess your situation. You need to start where you are, but well, where are you? What's your challenges? What are you trying to achieve? Those are all valid questions. You should choose a life cycle. One of the things, I'm not going to go into the details of life cycles here, but one of the interesting things about DA, which is one of the reasons why it's not prescriptive, is it has multiple life cycles. So where Scrum has one life cycle, the Scrum life cycle, Discipline Agile has 6. It has a Scrum-based project life cycle. It also has a Scrum-based continuous delivery life cycle, because not all teams take a project-driven approach. Particularly in the software world, most teams are product-oriented, not project-oriented. There's a lean Kanban project life cycle. There's a lean Kanban-based continuous delivery life cycle. That's what I would consider true continuous delivery, like from a DevOps point of view. There's a program life cycle for a team of teams or a group of initiatives, and there's an exploratory life cycle, more of a lean startup type of thing for a hypothesis-driven experimental approach. So different teams in different situations will choose a different life cycle. Choose the right life cycle for you, and then tailor it accordingly. And then you should probably do if you're serious, you should do a process tailoring workshop. Let's choose the right, let's start the project off, or the initiative off, with the best process that we can identify. And this can take a couple hours, but it gets you going in the right direction. And then over time, we want to evolve our way of working, hold retrospectives or other techniques to identify where we can improve and then improve. So the first 3 strategies you would do early in the life cycle of your team, during the inception or initiation phase, sprint 0, if you use that terminology. And this could take a few hours or a day or two, depending on, particularly on the assessment, now how much effort you want to go into the assessment. Steps 2 and 3 there, you do it in an afternoon, if that. And then evolving your way of working should be throughout your effort. And I'll talk about that in a second. So I would invite you to embrace the fact that teams are unique. Different teams are going to work in different ways because they're in different situations, and rightfully so. And this is what you want. You want to allow your teams to do the best they can in the situation that they face. Forcing a consistent process on them just because your management or your leadership team is futilely trying to govern something they probably don't understand very well, that's a sucker's bet. Having all your teams follow the same process, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, except from a useless bureaucrat point of view. Feel free to quote me on that one. So anyways, just tired of it. Okay, so also though, to give the Agile folks a bit of a hard time, you can do a lot better than failing fast. And I appreciate, failing fast has been a fad now for a few years in the Agile community. And certainly failing fast is better than failing slowly. Don't get me wrong. And, and failing fast, running experiments and failing, it's a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure this yo-yo here is having a lot of fun on his jet ski. I hope he's okay. I hope he's okay after wiping out like this. But failing fast might not have been a great idea for him. I don't know. I hope he didn't get hurt. And I hope he didn't rack up his jet ski doing that stuff. But yeah, I hope he had fun. But anyways, I'll leave it at that. But I think we can do a lot better than this. I know we can do a lot better than this. So you're probably familiar with PDSA or PDCA, depending on which version of Deming's advice you've learned. He actually, at the end of his career, he started with PDSA, and then he went to PDCA, which got popularized, and that's what got picked up by most practitioners. But he ended his career, he went back to PDSA, studying instead of just checking, because he was finding that the check stuff wasn't working as well as he'd hoped. he observed, he improved his process. He lived what he talked about. So anyways, in PDSA, what you can, what you want to do is figure, hey, we've got a problem. We want to improve the way we're working. The quality is not good enough. What are the issues? So we identify an issue, one or more issues, and we identify one or more ways that we can potentially address that issue. Now, the naive approach is to, hey, sit back and figure, hey, we're smart. We can figure this out on our own. Let's identify something, and then, we'll fail fast, which is better than failing slowly. Don't get me wrong. But with a little humility, you can recognize that even though your team is unique and facing a unique situation, the situation that you face is probably phenomenally similar to situations faced by other teams. And those other teams have, some of them at least, have figured out how to address that problem. So instead of making crap up and then experimenting with it and hoping it works, why don't you have a little bit of humility and do a little bit of searching and, ask a coach, hey, have you seen this problem before? What do you think? Use some AI system, go to ChatGPT and say, hey, what do you think? Blah, blah, blah. Here's the situation we're in. What would you suggest? I don't know how well that's going to work out for you, but, give it a shot. There's actually a couple of AI-based systems now that do process coaching. If you go poking around, and I'm sure there'll be more, later on this year. Or you can use apply the DA toolkit, look up the techniques in the toolkit. What's interesting is that PMI offers access to the toolkit free of charge. So, I would suggest getting some training to figure out how to navigate the toolkit, but it's a pretty darn good asset if you decide to take advantage of it. So then run the experiment, try out the new way of working. This might take you a few days, few weeks, depending on how long, you got to give enough time to figure out if it works or not. Measure how effective that technique was, because you still might fail. You never know. Hopefully you succeed. And then if it works out, adopt that technique. If it doesn't work out, abandon it. And hopefully if you're polite, you share your learns with others. So, share, because not everybody in an organization needs to learn the same lesson over and over and over again, right? So you can speed things up that way too. So this is a technique called guided continuous improvement. And basically what it is in the long run is it's a minor improvement over the standard PDSA strategy. It's just bringing a little bit of humility to the overall process and a little bit of reuse when it gets down to it. So anyways, interesting technique that you could choose to adopt. I'm also a firm believer in measuring your improvement. What gets measured gets improved. Years ago, there was a study at IBM, I think like 2008, 2009, this was published, where they compared, IBM's a huge organization, as we know. And what they did was they compared teams that were doing retrospectives and teams that weren't doing retrospectives. And they found that the teams that were trying to improve were doing better than the teams that weren't. They found the teams that were trying to improve and measured their improvement would do better than the teams that were trying to improve but not trying to measure. What was interesting was that they found that the teams that were measuring and then sharing their metrics with management did worse than the teams that did not share their metrics with management. And what the realization was, or at least what they believed was happening, they had a lot of evidence showing that this was true, was that the teams that were sharing their metrics with management perceived, rightfully or wrongfully, that they were being judged by those metrics. And as soon as they believed that they were being judged on the numbers, they would start focusing on the numbers and not on the improvement. So they'd start fudging their numbers, sometimes on purpose, sometimes just accidentally. But they started focusing on the numbers, not on the actual improvement. And as a result, they didn't improve as well. What was interesting was because of common tooling across these teams, we were able to measure what was going on based on other factors that sometimes the teams knew about, sometimes they didn't. So we had confirming metrics as to who was improving and who wasn't, regardless of what they were actually sharing with management. So anyways, this is early days of tooling being having all the logging to generate automatic metrics and dashboards and all that good sort of stuff. So anyways, measure your improvement, but don't share your measures. Interesting, interesting observation. So how can we do this at the organization level? How can we get better at the organization level? So first of all, you want to do organizational improvement. You want to find ways to share your learnings, have learnings and improvements across teams. Like I was saying earlier, it's not just good enough for my team to get better. It's nice, don't get me wrong, but my team has to interact with other teams. We collaborate with other teams. One of the myths of the Agile community is that teams that teams are unique, or they're not that they're unique, that they have complete control over their environment, that they're not coupled to anybody else, and it's simply not true. We have dependencies in other teams. I rely on the finance team, for example, for funding. I rely on the operations team for help to do automatic deployment, perhaps. Right. So we collaborate with other teams. So we're not independent, and that's okay. So the implication is we want to get good at working together. Like I said, this is if you're interested, the Discipline Agile coach certification from PMI is really good. And I should point out, I don't give any of these trainings, so I'm not trying to sell you my classes in Discipline Agile coaching. I don't do that. So I can honestly say this is that's a darn good cert. If you want to be a coach. If you don't want to be a coach, who cares? But anyways, it's a darn good. It's probably one of the better coaching certs out there, for at least for Agile coaches. So Discipline Agile offers some transformation advice at the way you can see the URL right there. It's a 3-step process. The middle step is huge, but anyways, first of all, start where you are, right? So you got to do an assessment, figure out where you are. You can do that yourself internally. You might want to bring somebody in to do that. Get a separate set of eyes on things. Then the big step is you need to go through improvement. That's a multi-year effort, and this step is all about learning how to learn. It's not, like I said earlier, it's not about adopting a framework. It might, you might do that. That might be, one of your improvements, but that's certainly not the, not the end of it. Because you want to get to the point where you're a learning organization, where you're thriving, where you've learned how to learn. So the goal of step 2 is to learn how to improve. And then step 3 is just get on that treadmill and never get off it. So DA includes a lot of continuous improvement strategies, both at the team level as well as at the organization level. Here's some of them. You can go look at the process goal diagram for continuous improvement. Off the top of my head, there's probably 40 or 50 techniques. I don't know exactly how many, but like I said, you can click on that URL and spend a minute counting how many there are. I don't know how many there are, but there's a lot. There's a lot of options. There's many, many different ways. And this is critical, right? You want to know what your options are. You want to choose the best strategy for you in your situation. And this is true at all levels of what your organization does. Do the best that you can in the situation that you face. So some parting advice before I go to Q&A. I see there's some messages in the chat. I haven't looked at any of them, so I don't know what they actually are yet, but we'll look in a second. So some parting advice from, I guess, Wally there. So anyways, I believe your goal should become a purposeful learning organization to, really learn how to learn. And I hope that your organization is about more than just making money. We're going into a very strange period in history right now where the next couple of decades, we really need to rethink our approach to the environment and many other aspects of the way we run the planet. So become purposeful, I hope. You can do this. It is possible. Organizations are doing this. It's hard, requires hard work. This is a learning journey. That will never end. So this work will never end. And that's good. I think it's a good thing that we're going to spend the rest of our lives learning and improving and having a good time doing it, I hope. And I would invite you to invest in your people. Get them trained up in DA. There's a lot of really good stuff there. Back when I did do DA training, we would do introductory classes, and I would get people who were had been Scrum masters for like 5 or 10 years, and like coaches. And often they'd be very cynical. It's like, well, I know, I've been doing Scrum for 5 years. I know everything there is to know. You're not going to be able to teach me anything. I literally had people telling me that, and giving me that attitude at the beginning of a 2 or 3 day workshop. And then invariably by the end of the first day, they'd come up to me and they'd say, wow, I owe you an apology. Not only have you covered material that I've never heard of in Scrum, you've actually given, and you've given us solutions to problems that we've been struggling with sometimes for months. And not only do you give us potential solutions, you gave us several options. So which we never got in Scrum and never even heard of in the Scrum community. And it's not just I'm picking on Scrum there, but I don't mean to do that. But anyways, Scrum is great. So, but that's what I've seen over and over and over again. So get your people trained up in DA, have them at least go, the pages are free at PMI.org. Go take a look at them. And if you're a PMI member, you should be able to get a copy of the Choose Your Well book for free, at least, the PDF copy of it at least. So all free, great material. It's all free. What's not to like? And also, just before I go, I want to say, for those of you in the international community, and including my friends at PMI, I want to challenge you. Earlier today, my company made a $500 donation to the Red Cross to help the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. And I would invite you, for those of you who live outside of Ukraine like I do, I would invite you to make a donation, donate whatever you can to help out. And for PMI, I challenge you to match my donation. And I'm a significantly smaller organization. My company is significantly smaller than PMI. So yeah, and I hope you choose to exceed my donation. But anyways, thank you very much. And I hope we can throw some good money Ukraine's way. I'm also a firm believer. There's a great organization called UA Postcards, which I donate to on a regular basis. Actually, I send Ukrainian postcards to the Russian consulate in Toronto to share my opinion of what they're doing. So, anyways, nice way to tick those guys off. But anyways, as I said, so thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions. I don't know how I don't even know how much time we got left. Yeah, we got a little bit of time left, and let's try to take some questions, if that's okay. Should I just go look at the chat, I guess?
We could ask participants to unmute themselves and ask their questions.
Okay. That would be great. Okay, we'll tell you what. Here's at 12:43, at least my time. So about 15 minutes into the presentation. Andrew asked a question. So Andrew, if you're still on, do you want to jump in and ask?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, Scott. Thank you for your presentation. You made some overview of this methodology. Could you please tell me, my question was actually, what will be beyond disciplined Agile? What will be the next step of Agile, disciplined Agile? Because you are much deeper in this topic and you have much great experience than me, maybe some colleagues. It's very interesting to get your opinion.
Yeah, definitely. So I just want to say this is my opinion, and like I can't speak for PMI, but certainly there's a lot of great stuff in Disciplined Agile, and there's still work to do. So earlier I was talking about marketing. There's a lot of opportunity. If you look at the marketing process blade, it's pretty sparse. So there's a lot of opportunity to flesh that out and hopefully partner with the Agile Marketing Group or the Agile Marketing Association or some other association to flesh that out. So there's a lot of good opportunities for partnerships. Some of the interesting work that we have been seeing in the DA world is the work around value stream. I didn't talk about value streams at all, really, but the value stream management layer in the DA toolkit is very interesting. A PMI has a cert around value stream management. or the Discipline Agile Value Stream Consultant certification, I should call it. This is a significant career opportunity for project managers. So if you happen to be a PM and you're casting about what can I do next, maybe becoming a value stream manager is where you want to point your career, or a value stream consultant, depending on what you're aiming for. Certainly value streams are absolutely critical to organizations these days, and are becoming more critical. So there's some good stuff there, but yeah, there's a lot of great opportunity for PMI to flesh out the toolkit. There's and frankly, to bring a lot of the ideas of DA into the rest of the PMI material, giving people better choice. And frankly, some of that's happened. If you take a look at the current version of the PMBOK guide, it's a lot more flexible. It's a lot more principles based rather than prescriptive. So I would invite the PMI, once again, not being in it, but I would invite the PMI community to have the humility to look at DA in a fresh light, and particularly like the mindset and the architecture and the approach that we've taken in DA, and say, you know what, we can take these this great strategy of giving people choices and putting choices into context, and getting rid of the prescription and becoming truly flexible. I think those approaches, that strategy would help PMI to update a lot of their material, and to really really modernize some of the standards. And don't get me wrong, the material there that they've got already is pretty good, but there's an opportunity to bring modern thinking into that. And some of that modern thinking is, it depends. DA is the it depends toolkit, because it does. That is the reality, right? The concept of best practices was a bad idea on day one, but we need to get away from that. So it really is about making better choices and having options and doing the right thing for your situation. So, and DA leads the way. I can't really, other than maybe Essence in the software world, I really can't point to anything that is as flexible and advanced as DA is, from the point of view of actually tailoring your way of working for your situation. So there's a lot of opportunity there of bringing really truly infusing DA thinking into the rest of PMI would be a phenomenally great idea. But we'll have to see what happens over the next decade or so, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Stefania, you had a question about teams.
Yeah, hi Scott. I'm actually particularly referring to, like not huge organizations like enterprise ones, but like maybe like mid or small size, when there are different already different departments as said, like sales, marketing, and software development, security, and so on. So like, what is the definition of a team would be there? Because like in Scrum, yes, it's like up to 9 people. But when you have a department, which is, for example, 30 people, which operate around the product within the organization, so it's like similar product and they have quite dependencies, introducing change is quite a tricky thing. So either you introduce it like for 30-member team, or do you try to find a way to break them?
Yeah, so no, quick answer is it depends. In DA, we had something called the context scaling, factors. So we don't set team size limits. That's ignorant. I realize that most Agilists believe in that, teams of 9 and 7 plus or minus 2 rule. That's just a phenomenally and observably stupid thing to do. You're talking just a minute ago, you were talking about, a marketing group of 30 people, or, whatever the number was. I can choose to observe that actually happens in the real world. I've been on teams that are like a single team of several hundred people, and that was perfectly fine. It really depends on your situation. Now, you organize that team a lot differently than a team of 5 people, but it really does depend. And you do what you really want is have a team size that fits your situation, not follow some rule of 7 plus or minus 2, or feeding your team with 2 pizzas, or it's just some it's just crazy stuff, right? first of all, give your people better food than that. But second, if I need 3 pizzas to feed my team, I'm gonna buy 3 pizzas. It is what it is. So there is no hard and fast rules. Now, we do give some team structure advice in DA. This was something that, the organization structure thing was something I wanted to focus on more, but then I left. So, but if you read the team topologies book and both versions of that book, because there's a remote team topology book as well, there's some great advice there. But you want to organize your team, or allow your teams to organize themselves in a way that makes the best sense for them. And of course, there's different ways of doing that. And small teams might make sense. Big teams might make sense. A team of teams might make sense. So it really does depend. So let them figure it out. And now obviously give them coaching and get them some advice. And like I said, there's an opportunity for PMI to flesh out some of their advice around team topology and organizational topology, without a doubt. I hope they choose to do that, but we'll have to see as well. But yeah, it does depend. Allow your teams to do the right thing. Don't inflict rules on them. It doesn't work. Sometimes it's a great idea. That's a great idea in some situations, and is a phenomenally stupid idea in others.
Indeed, like some thoughts for me to think further. And thank you for the advice, for the books.
Yeah, thank you. Yuri, you had a question at about the 35 minutes.
I have a little bit question about managing uncertainties with discipline Agile. Could you share with us some cases from your practice, or some advice from your also practices about managing uncertainties in short time and long time perspectives with discipline Agile?
What type of uncertainties? What's an uncertainty?
Every type. We live in an uncertainty world, and this uncertainty influencing to all aspects of our life. And what from your point of view is the main difference with managing short time and long time uncertainties with discipline Agile? Is it possible?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
So one of the things we did in Discipline Agile was we didn't limit ourselves to Agile thinking. Originally, if you look at the early 2000s, planning and modeling were dirty words, and for some of your purists, they still are. And we never fell into that trap in DA, never did. And so if you look at the life cycles in DA, in particular the project-oriented life cycles, there's upfront work being done. So we think, from a software point of view, we think through architecture, we think through the plan, but knowing full well it's going to change, right? Knowing full well that there are uncertainties and we don't know everything there is to know. So we stay flexible. So we adopt some of the lean strategies around making decisions at the last most responsible moment. So don't try to think things through up front, because all you're doing is guessing. These detailed plans up front, those are guesses, and you're going to guess wrong. And then you have to maintain and update these plans and update these models and update these documents and all this crap that you did earlier. And it's just a burden on you. So keep things, still model, think things through, but don't invest in making the decisions until you need to make the decisions. Leave your options open, basically. But have a target that you're aiming for, right? So have some long-term business goals, have some long-term technology goals, has some long-term organizational image goals, whatever is important to you, and be aiming for that. You might never hit them, or you might rethink what those goals are, those long-term goals are, but that's okay. Stay on that path as long as that path makes sense. And then when it doesn't, get on a different path and go in pivot a bit and go in a slightly different direction. So yeah, some upfront thinking is definitely valuable. It's the upfront commitments that are the kiss of death. And so you really want to be smart about that. So yeah, so that sort of thinking is built right into DA, both at the team level, at the organizational level, and then keeping things in sync as best you can. But it's all about think things through, but don't make the decisions until you need to. On projectmanagement.com, I wrote an article a couple years ago now about how much planning should you do. and it was an update to some thinking around how much upfront modeling should you do, because modeling and planning are the exact same thing, different words for the exact same concept. You're thinking through the future. And what's interesting, and the answer is you want to be just barely good enough planning and just barely good enough modeling, just do enough thinking to go in the right direction. And the article walks through what are the motivating factors for you to do more upfront thinking, and what are the motivating factors for you to do less upfront thinking. And what's interesting is that the greater the complexity that you face and the greater the uncertainty that you face, the less upfront thinking you want to do. Because if you're facing dramatic change and you know it, doing a lot of planning is a complete and utter waste of time. Plan to survive. Do what you need to do to put yourself in a good position to get through potential scenarios. But planning on something to happen in 6 months when you know full well more than likely it's everything's going to change dramatically. Doesn't make any sense. So don't do it. Don't waste your time on things that aren't going to work. So that sort of thinking is embedded all the way, all over in DA. In our architecture advice, in our planning advice, in our strategy advice. That sort of stuff is that thinking is there all the way through.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a really interesting article. Dig it up if you can. If you can't find it, send me an email and I'll point you to it. But I think the title is something along, how much planning should you do, or if you do a search on just barely good enough planning on projectmanagement.com, you should be able to find it. But it's a fairly interesting article.
Okay, thank you. Be in touch.
Okay. I'm probably going to completely blow the pronunciation of this person's name. Vyashevslav. I apologize.
It's Moises Slava. Okay, it's Slavic is also. Hello, Scott. Thank you a lot for your presentation, for your advices, and maybe some insights that we heard before. My question is more practical than previously. I'm interested in some really environments that we have right now. How we can adapt to the frequent change of our team members, because now we have situation when our team members can be changed maybe 30-40% per year. It's not they not be fired, they just maybe switch to another project, and we can't build a really friendly environment in this situation. We don't have a lot of time to build a lean atmosphere, lean environment, and how we can be adopted to that.
Yeah, so a couple of things. So some of that change is for good reasons, like if they leave the organization, whatever else, and there's nothing you can do about that. Some of that change is for phenomenally stupid reasons. Changing priorities and managers making weird decisions. Now some of those decisions are good, but a couple things, and I've worked in environments like this. If you've ever worked in an Indian outsourcing firm, for example, 30-40% is their norm. It just is what it is. So a couple things. It tells you, if that's really, if it's 30, whatever the number is, if you have a high rate of changing team members, a couple things it tells you: have very small projects, they have very small initiatives, because you're probably going to lose the people that are working on them. And bringing somebody in to take over, they're going to waste, they're going to spend most of their time catching up, figuring out what's going on, and then they take off, right? So with that amount of change, you've got to be working on very small, quick things. The second thing it tells you is to have standards in place, and to everybody, for a software team, follow coding conventions. You use the same technologies. So I've got to be, so if I'm a coder and I'm coming in on a project, I've got to be able to come up to speed really quickly, particularly if I'm only going to be there for a couple months, right? And then bug off, get pulled off onto something else. And if that work isn't consistent, if the documentation isn't written in consistent manner, if it's not documented at all, then I've got a problem. And same thing on the business side, right? Like, I could have said, if I'm on the finance team, and everybody's got their own little spreadsheets or whatever, and they're all doing it in different ways. that's a disaster for anybody coming in fresh, right? So consistency is in standards is absolutely critical when you have that high level of turnover rate. But keep things small. Try to avoid as much turnover as you can. Like only have turnover because you need to have turnover, not because people are randomly changing their minds, on a whim. And I've worked in organizations like that the managers can't make a decision for more and stick to it for more than 5 minutes. But then, follow, common conventions and standards as much as possible. To make it easy to jump in, and fill in a position really quickly, because if that's the situation, then that's what you've got to do. But but try to fix that problem if you can. But easier said than done, of course. Antonio, what's your question?
Hello, Scott. Here I am. My question was, assuming a company has both people with the role of DA coach and a value stream consultant, how these two guys can work together? Because I know that they do maybe two different things, but in some point they may cross each other, right?
Yeah, I would assume they're going to be working together, actually. So they're both senior roles, which is good. So the value stream consultant's typically looking at a bigger picture than the coach will be. The value stream consultant will be looking at the whole value stream and many teams working together to a single purpose, I hope. Whereas a DA coach is more than likely either coaching several teams, or they're coaching and several teams that are similar, but they're not really working together, but just, I coach 5 teams and it is what it is. Or I'm coaching at 2 or 3 teams and their interactions with other parts of the organization in order to achieve different things. And I might be working with, my software team primarily, but I'm actively coaching, the security team because they interact with my software team and other people's software teams, and they need help to become more effective. The enterprise architecture team, the data team, and the governance team, right? And so I'm spreading my time across them and figuring out those interactions. Now, all those teams might be part of a larger value stream, but my focus isn't on tweaking the value stream. My focus is on tweaking the interactions between those teams, helping the teams tweak the interactions between each other. Where value stream consultants looking at the bigger picture and they're tweaking behaviors across the entire value stream. So it's the scoping issue.
Okay, clear. And eventually, how either one of the two help the company to deal with the transformation toward the business agility?
Yeah, either one. So PMI also offers the Brightline material as well. So one of the things that we were talking about when I was there was sort of coordinating all that, because who is running the overall transformation. So if you've got like a Brightline person, great. If not, then it'll be like your senior coach. More than likely, it depends is the answer, but more than likely it's going to be your senior Agile coach will be working with the executives that are leading the overall transformation, because you'll probably have like a COE, a community of excellence of 1 or more coaches, and maybe the value stream consultants too, and they're all working together to help the overall organization. Quick answer is it depends, but I would look at if you get a chance, look at Brightline.
Great. I barely know it. Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you everybody for your questions. Thank you, Scott, for amazing presentation. And I hope our members and Ukrainian project managers and Scrum Masters will join your courses very soon.
Yeah, I hope so. But anyway, so thank you very much for having me. And as soon as it's on YouTube, let me know, and I'll share the video. I'll share the URL out to the rest of the world.
Thank you.